makers of Planet Earth had one huge ambition: to show viewers our world as they've never seen it before. Filmed over 5 years, the crew travelled to the most remote parts of our planet and gained privileged access to places few people have explored. Now, the Planet Earth team reveal their most memorable moments from the making of the series.
It was like something out of Gulliver's Travels. You couldn't see the elephant for all these lions just covering it.
I never forget it. I looked at the image and I said, this is revolutionary.
We'll discover their high points.
It's fantastic.
Wow, that you couldn't have asked for more. That was wild.
And their not so high points. And they'll tell us which sequences they consider to be their great Planet Earth moments.
The Birds of Paradise.
Wolves chasing down the baby caribou.
It has to be the snow geese.
That phenomenal shot of Angel Falls.
Kilometres north of Norway, and Planet Earth series producer Alistair Fothergill is beginning his final day of an Arctic filming trip. The images that he and his crew are about to capture will become one of the greatest moments from the series, and a personal highlight for Alistair.
We noticed on the horizon a slight lightning on the ice, reflected light, which means that possibly there was a break in the fog. We flew through the fog and came into the clearing in the cloud of beautiful evening light over this broken ice. We were filming just the patterns of the ice, and then suddenly I spotted this male polar bear on the shore.
That's beautiful. That is amazing, isn't it?
And he walked in a completely relaxed way into the water and started swimming through this lovely pattern of broken ice, and I just knew it was lovely.
Oh, look at that ice coming in. Yeah. Right, that's really peachy.
At last, after 10 days of bad weather, they were recording some very special images.
Nobody ever filmed polar bears out in this world of broken ice. You can't go there on foot. But just the composition of the images, the dark, dark water, the beautiful patterns of the ice, and this exquisite animal that then dived down and swam underwater, and you could see it, the water was crystal clear.
These images of a polar bear swimming among fragments of sea ice are exactly what Planet Earth promised it would deliver, the world as we've never seen it before.
And finally I said to the camera, let's pull out and pull out and pull out and pull out. And you started from this polar bear, and it became a tiny, tiny moving white dot in this endless landscape of broken ice. It was just such a fresh way to see polar bears. Just made you think this is the biggest land carnivore on our planet, lost in a wonderful world of frozen ice. So it's special.
The sequence was completed when producer Vanessa Berlowitz filmed alongside a swimming polar bear, a moment she remembers vividly.
I was within 3 foot of a 12-foot male polar bear, and at one moment I could have reached out and patted him on the nose. And just seeing the power of this majestic animal as he's swimming, powering through the Arctic currents, I was moved to tears and overawed by this animal, but also slightly scared, because I thought if at any moment he's had enough, he could just whip over that canoe in seconds and have us all. But I shall take that away. Remember that forever.
Powerful aerial images of the swimming polar bear were made possible by a gyro-stabilized camera system not usually used by wildlife filmmakers.
Planet Earth needed to be epic. It needed to feel as if you were seeing something like you've never seen it before. But more than anything else, I think the key thing that I wanted to push was a very cinematic, emotional experience. The special Cineflex aerial camera that we used was so important to Planet Earth. It put the animals into the habitat and made people understand emotionally what challenges that habitat threw up to the animals that live there.
The Cineflex camera gave the team the opportunity to capture dramatic moments that no wildlife cameraman could film unaided. One of those dramatic moments takes place on the tundra of Canada's far north, where wildlife filmmaker Jeff Turner has spent the last 15 years filming wolves.
There's something wonderfully familiar about the wolf. I remember the first time in the Northwest Territories I saw one of my first wolves in the wild. I was overwhelmingly struck by how much like my dog it was. I just suddenly felt this connection.
But Jeff had been continually frustrated in his attempt to film one of the great prizes of wildlife filming, wolves hunting caribou.
The key for the wolves, the way that they're able to survive in an environment like that, is that they don't have to stay in one place. And so their ability to move with the food source, with the caribou, gives them that advantage, that edge.
The wolf's ability to travel non-stop across huge distances makes it very difficult for any cameraman attempting to follow them on the ground. But the Planet Earth team was bringing in its new toy. From hundreds of meters above, they could spy on a pack of wolves below. For once, they could be ahead of the game.
There was a big herd of caribou up ahead. We saw them. We saw some wolves coming in from about 2 or 3 miles away, because you get this incredible view. You can see everything happening. The wolves are white, the caribou are white, the tundra is sort of browny green, and you just see everything unfolding.
With the wolves closing in on the caribou, Jeff is dropped down next to the herd. Both he and the aerial crew are perfectly positioned to film the drama of the hunt as it unfolds.
It's a very emotional and powerful thing to see an animal kill another animal. You can't help but root for the little caribou calf as he's trying to get away. But at the same time, it's not fair to the wolves. Their pups are back in the den starving, so it's a life or death situation for them as well.
Had at last filmed a successful wolf hunt, but they weren't celebrating just yet.
We had one moment where I thought we'd lost the ground cameraman, because in our panic to film, we quickly set him down, forgot to give him a GPS and satellite phone or some way of contacting us. And everything looked the same, this big open tundra, and we couldn't see where poor Jeff was.
The biggest threat to anyone stranded on the open tundra isn't wolves or bears, it's mosquitoes.
You could die from mosquitoes. they would kill you. And I didn't have any survival gear, so it was always in the back of my mind. I sure hope the helicopter remembers where I am and will come back and get me, because I didn't have a sleeping bag or a tent or anything.
And then I remembered that we'd settled down near a lake that looked like a kidney shape, and I saw that lake again, and we finally landed, and there he was waiting for us. But it's impossible to see a tiny human being in that vast landscape.
The drama of a wolf hunt had all the classic ingredients for making a great Planet Earth moment. But others were to come as a surprise to those involved.
When I was told to go off and film fungus in the jungle, I think, why don't I get really exciting shoots? But it was incredibly interesting and incredibly challenging.
Using specialist time-lapse photography, an event that normally takes days or weeks can be condensed into seconds.
Our remit was to film parasitic fungus called cordyceps, which attack insects and then grows these strange fruiting bodies growing out of the insect, which had never been filmed before, so it was quite exciting.
The fruiting bodies of cordyceps burst out of their insect hosts in a variety of bizarre forms, but the team needed to film a time-lapse shot of the fungus actually growing from an insect's body.
We spent weeks searching through the jungle trying to find dead insects, and eventually, after a lot of trouble, we found one. We set up our time-lapse cameras on this insect, expecting that it would probably take 2 or 3 days. In the end, it ended up taking 3 weeks for this to grow.
You're just mesmerised by it. It's grotesque, it's horrible, you can't quite believe it's happening, but you can't take your eyes off it either, because it looks such an alien thing. You can't quite believe that you've been lucky to get that on film as it's happening. It's just gruesome, but you have to watch it.
That was the only ant infected by cordyceps we found all the time, so normally those cases are the ones that got away, but in this case it was the one that went right.
For some of the Planet Earth team, the most memorable moments are the ones they would rather forget. Cameraman Warwick Sloss was sent to Madagascar to film baobab trees. Aerial shots were needed, but the flying machine taking him into the skies was a little out of the ordinary.
I've never, ever been in anything like this before, and I'm slightly nervous of it. Partly because it's basically a deck chair with a balloon on top, and partly because I can see where my head's going to be. It's going to be incredibly close to that burner.
The Cineble's creator, Danny Marel, takes a nervous Warwick on his maiden flight. Combining the lift of a hot air balloon with the forward thrust from a propeller, the Cinebull, in theory, is a lot more manoeuvrable than a conventional hot air balloon.
As long as the wind stays good and they don't land in Mozambique, we should be absolutely fine.
I could see this tree coming towards us, and it really was the only tree for maybe 300 or 400 meters. I know what I'll do. I'll run the camera because it's going to be a lovely shot, getting a shot of this tree, but I wasn't really, even with a couple of seconds to go before we hit it, I wasn't really expecting to hit it. In the event we did hit it, we hit it really hard. It was a bit like being in a sort of fairly low-speed car crash. And I can remember lots of branches and spikes and leaves and generally sharp stuff going into my face. I do remember there was some swearing. I do remember thinking, oh, it's true what they say about your life flashing before you.
Stupid man, stupid. okay?
Yeah, yes.
It's good for me.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay?
Just a minor flesh wound. In these situations, you just have to, put it together and carry on doing what you're there to do.
Filming is suspended while Danny repairs the damage caused by the crash. It takes him most of the night. The next day, and the Cinnabul is cleared for takeoff. This time, Danny's flying is spot on.
We go straight through there.
And Warwick can get what he came for, beautiful aerials of the baobab forest. When intrepid cameraman Doug Allen was sent out to the Himalayas to film the elusive snow leopard, he might as well have been asked to film the Yeti. But Doug had a straightforward approach to this daunting task.
There's only two rules when you're filming, when you're wildlife filming. The first thing is that you can only be in one place at one time. That means that you don't get too frustrated. There are times inevitably when you get back to camp and they say, boy, you should have been here this afternoon. There was an animal only a few yards away and you've been waiting for it somewhere else. So you make the best decision you can and you put yourself there. But the second one is simply, if you're not there, you'll never see it at all.
Confident in his rules, Doug picked his spot and waited. And waited.
Nothing. 5 days. That's 35 hours of watching. This is tedious stuff. No cuts. If you got just a little bit of a hint, a wee bit of a sighting, now and again your spirits would be lifted. But right now, I'd swap a little bit of this animal's charisma for a little bit more visibility. I saw snow leopards twice in the 12 weeks that I spent on location.
In that time, Doug captured less than a minute of film of the camera-shy cat. A new location was needed, but the next best place for seeing snow leopards was one of the most dangerous places on our planet.
Against terror.
And dangerous. To discover that was on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan at the time when there was a lot of activity. I just thought, gosh, this animal is more out of reach.
A new location and a new cameraman facing the prospect of a white Christmas alone.
It's going to be the first Christmas and New Year I've spent away from my family. I spoke to my wife and kids last night, and they were just about to go out carol singing around the village. It would have been nice to have been with them. However, that's it really.
Christmas Day didn't bring the present Mark was hoping for. It would be another 5 days before Mark was rewarded with his first ever glimpse of a snow leopard. Balancing precariously on a steep ledge, the leopard seemed totally at ease.
It's an animal that, for me, epitomises the wilderness and epitomises mountain wilderness. Everything about it is built for camouflage in those mountains. It's exquisite, it's perfectly adapted to its environment with its long tail that it curls round itself for warmth and uses for stability. Stubby legs, everything about it is built for those mountains.
With the leopard's lair in sight, all Mark had to do now was to sit tight and stake it out. 3 years after the Planet Earth team began their quest to film the elusive snow leopard, Mark was in position to capture one of the greatest moments of the series. One of the most photographed cats on the planet would seem an unlikely subject for new and exciting behaviour. But when producer Johnny Keelan and camerawoman Justine Evans heard news of a pride of lions attacking elephants in Botswana, they knew they had the makings of a great Planet Earth moment. At first, getting close to the lions didn't seem too much of a problem.
Justine, there's one just to your right.
Lion, right here?
Yeah.
There's an eye right next to us.
I was in this open-backed Land Cruiser, so it had no defence. And so that was, I remember thinking, I just want to get on the roof. I want to run away. I was thinking, I've got a month of this.
And they don't move very quickly at night, they're just walking very slowly. You'd think it would be easy to follow 30 lions in a big open savannah, but actually we lost them on many occasions.
No, can't see or hear any lions. How about you, Over?
We were there for about 10 days before we saw our first hunt, so we were really, really desperate to actually film something.
Eventually, lions and elephants came face to face.
When it happened, none of us were sort of emotionally prepared for how we'd feel. It was very upsetting to see a big, intelligent animal like an elephant brought down in front of you and jumped on by 30 lions and then just eaten alive.
It was like something out of Gulliver's Travels. You couldn't see the elephant for all these lions just covering it. It was truly shocking, especially sitting there in the dark. When you had the camera off, you couldn't see what was going on. It was dark, but you could hear it. You could hear the last gurgling sounds of this elephant. And then just as I was looking at this eye, shocked that the elephant was so conscious, a lion came across with its tongue and just licked across the eye.
The feeling you have afterwards is not one of triumph where you would normally have that on a filming trip. We got the shot, great. It's actually one of real sadness. We all drove off in the car quietly back to camp. No one really said anything. Very somber mood and very different from any other filming trip.
It was quite shocking. Probably the most shocking thing I've ever seen.
Finding a camel in a desert would seem an easy assignment for any film crew, but not when it's the extremely rare Bactrian camel, and the desert concerned is the vast Gobi. At times, it felt more like a game of cat and mouse.
Here was an animal that could spot you from 3 miles and quite happily run for about 30 miles in the opposite direction.
Sometimes a light would catch a wing mirror or windscreen and they could see a sun glint, and that would be it, that would set them off. We were always on the chase. We ended up driving for about 7,500 kilometres in total during the shoot to try and locate the animals.
The team's morale was plummeting as fast as the temperature.
I've never been so cold.
Temperatures got down to minus 35, which I later found out when I came back to the UK is twice as cold as your average household freezer. We were camping for the duration of the shoot, so we didn't have much in the way of insulation. All the 8 crew members ended up sharing a large tent, which added a bit of body warmth to the situation. If you left a cup of tea out on a table, it would be frozen solid within about 3 or 4 minutes. You had to be aware of metal items because your fingers would stick to them. And our food as well was frozen solid. We had a large cardboard box with chunks of meat in it. So cooking involved chipping off chunks of meat, frying up some noodles and having this kind of fatty, oily broth. I ended up losing about 2.5 stone on the shoot. So it's a great diet if you want to lose a bit of weight.
The reason why we chose winter is because that was the time where the camels came together in large groups. And that was the time they would rut and compete over females. So there was much more opportunity to get behaviour, and that's what we were going for. But look at what we got. 2 months of filming. We had 6 decent filming opportunities. Opportunities where we got close enough to film camels that weren't running like the wind in the opposite direction.
The footage they shot of a male camel wooing females must surely qualify as one of the more bizarre moments from the series. Planet Earth team never shied away from filming in extreme locations. Nonetheless, diving beneath the frozen surface of Lake Baikal, the world's deepest lake, was a moment to set the heart racing.
It was one of the most exhilarating shoots of my life, but one of the most nerve-wracking.
Mark was hoping to come face to face with some of Baikal's unique creatures, but first he had to face his fears.
When you descend through your 1 metre squared gap in the ice, you know you're kissing goodbye to the only space to take a breath in the next hour, and that's quite foreboding. People beforehand thought we were crazy to enter under the ice, knowing that you've got one exit in and out, and that you'd be struck down by this sort of intense feeling of claustrophobia. I'm no macho man, but it was absolutely exhilarating. Your safety line was attached to the lead diver. What was important was you just didn't lose sight of the lead diver. If you did, then you'd be lost under the ice forever. There wasn't a hope in hell that you'd ever be able to punch your way through an ice shelf a metre thick. All your concerns that quickly evaporated as you were bowled over by these extraordinary underwater ice sculptures. And when you come across these bizarre creatures like giant amphipods that few people in the world have ever had the opportunity to see,
So you kept one eyeball on the lead diver and the other eyeball looking for Nerpa, the late Baikal seal. These fat, rotund creatures that glide effortlessly and they just zip past you. They were real treats. Within 30 minutes your toes and fingertips were aching with pain. Your lips were scorched as if you'd been burnt by the cold, and it was time to get out. But boy, what an amazing 30 minutes those were.
No area was off limits to the Planet Earth team, not even a location in New Mexico, the whereabouts of which are a closely guarded secret. This unremarkable entrance leads to one of the most spectacular cave systems in the world. It was discovered in 1986 when some cavers dug through several meters of loose soil. They named the cave Lechuguilla. What they discovered was an underground wonderland.
Lechuguilla is one of the most spectacular caves in the world. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I saw pictures of Lechuguilla in my first week on the series, and I knew that this was a place we needed to include. But it was a whole 2 years, if not slightly more, before we got in there. It's a beautiful cave, but it's also one of the most restricted caves. The features and formations are so delicate, they don't just let anybody in there. It was with a huge relief that we were finally standing above Lechuguilla, ready to enter the cave for the first time.
This terrifying descent into the black was just the beginning of a long and arduous journey into the heart of Lechuguilla.
Our campsite for filming was about 9 hours caving, just to get to where we were going to stay.
As they descended, the passageways got narrower and narrower. The claustrophobia of squeezing through shoulder-width crevices must be most people's caving nightmare.
If you got stuck in a hole like that, they'll have to break your collarbone to pull you out, because it's the only way they can bend a human body.
The film crew wouldn't see daylight again for 10 days. Their only contact with the outside world was through their support team.
We had to have a support crew bringing in car batteries and then taking them out again when we'd finished them. We had about 25 volunteer cavers coming in and out on shifts round the clock.
Eventually, they reached Lechuguilla's most spectacular cavern, the Chandelier Ballroom.
Suddenly you emerge into this chamber with these giant crystals, and we all just kind of sat there and watched and looked at them and took it all in.
Now they had to translate the static beauty of this cave into moving images.
It was an incredibly difficult challenge because there's nothing that moves in Lechuguilla. It's effectively a dead cave. There's virtually no animal life. There's just bacteria. So everything else had to be brought to life with light, with camera movements, so we could really do it justice.
Revealing the hidden beauty of this cave for a wider audience had an extra significance for the Planet Earth team. This was the last time a film crew would be allowed into the secret world of Lechuguilla. Cameraman Doug Allen and field assistant Jason Roberts are about to enter an area of wilderness that has been closed to filmmakers for more than 20 years. The snow-covered slopes of Norway's Konkarland conceal the highest density of polar bear dens in the world. Planet Earth was given unique access to film, but there was a catch.
The catch was that because it's a protected area, the Norwegians said, okay, we'll do 2 helicopter flights. We'll take you in and we'll take you out. Because we want the place undisturbed, we don't want any snow machines. It's going to be you, Jason, and everything on foot. That's quite a big thing to take on board.
Without a snowmobile, Doug and Jason would have to make daily searches for polar bear dens on foot, dragging all their film kit behind them on an exhausting 14-mile round trip.
When you're out on foot, we found ourselves becoming much more aware of changes in the weather, increases in the wind, drops in the temperature. You had this heightened awareness of the environment in a wholly natural way, and what initially started off as being a restriction or an imposition actually ended up making the shoot truly, truly special.
Female polar bears make their dens on steep slopes, but predicting where they would emerge was proving a real challenge. After weeks of searching, the crew finally got lucky.
This is fantastic. She's out on the slopes. Four weeks we've been waiting to get this one opportunity, but now that it's happening, it's just fantastic.
Close behind the mother bear, her tiny 8-week-old cubs.
When that polar bear went back up to the slope, having come out, and the 2 little cubs were standing at the den entrance, I remember saying to myself, yes, now we've got it. Now we're in with a chance of really getting something special. That was really great. Then to see these little bears come out for the first time out, and then to watch them, to see all of the time that they were out for the next 12 days before they went down onto the sea ice, it really was a massive privilege. In 20 years of wildlife filming, I would put that in my top 3 or 4 experiences. To see her out on the sea ice with her 2 cubs, safe, I knew that once she was on the ice there was no way we were going to follow her, so it meant that we had absolutely seen and been with her as much as we possibly could. And for all that to come together, and then 2 hours later the helicopter arrived and whisked us back into another world, it was just such a fitting end for the shoot. It was perfect. You couldn't write a better ending to the story.
Some animals seemed unlikely stars of a great Planet Earth moment.
I'm not a huge bird lover. I think you've got to be a bit of a spotter to really enjoy bird sequences. So I was a bit unconvinced that we could really deliver the emotional impact through a crane sequence.
The spectacular Himalayan backdrop did little to change Vanessa's mind.
How are we going to ever film these cranes? I know that 50,000 of them are going to come through here in dribs and drabs, but they're tiny compared to this vast gorge, which is surrounded by 8,000 metre peaks.
Despite her doubts, Vanessa asked cameramen Barry Britton and Gavin Thurston to film the migrating demoiselle cranes.
With the cranes, it was particularly difficult because the valley is so wide, it's about 7 miles wide. And the first few days I was on the right side, but nothing happened. Then I was on the wrong side, they were 7 miles away. It's not like you can change in 10 minutes. It's a day's walk to get from one side to the other with the kit, and back up to about 12,000 feet level with the cranes.
Vanessa's doubts slowly ebbed away as each day brought the team a step closer to their goal.
Fantastic.
And gradually, day by day, we'd sort of both climb to the top of mountain tops with our storyboards and say over the radio, well, I managed to get a close-up shot of them flying past, or I got a mid-shot of 20.
That's beautiful. Oh yes, I've got that.
And slowly started to piece the sequence together, but it was quite hard, even there, to realise whether it was going to come together.
It would take the appearance of another bird to finally convince the team they had the makings of a great sequence, the golden eagle.
Sure enough, 2 golden eagles came in, soaring above them, and I saw one golden eagle peel away and head straight for this skein of cranes.
Okay, I'm on the group.
As it came out the other side, amazingly, I was still on it. I mean, these were tiny, tiny specks in the viewfinder.
Okay, I'm on him.
And I stayed on them, and I was really proud. It was in focus, it was in the frame, and I thought I'm going to have to let them leave frame before the rocks in the foreground came into the shot. So I stopped the camera to let them leave frame, and as I stopped the camera, these 2 specks stopped as well, and I realised I'd been following 2 specks of dust which are on the focusing screen of the camera. But luckily, Barry Britton got the shot and saved me. To see that eagle come stooping in, the crane doesn't stand a chance. You see them tumbling through the air, and I think it gives a sense of scale because they are tumbling and tumbling and tumbling.
And suddenly, when you saw the rushes and this incredible shot, you realised there was the makings of a very emotional sequence. And I look back now and I think it's one of my favourites in the programme.
It's hard to define exactly what makes a great Planet Earth moment. But there was one sequence that touched many viewers.
It was a very significant sequence because it's very powerful, it's very emotional.
It showed a hungry polar bear trying to kill a walrus.
And in that one moment, I think it encapsulated the plight of the polar bear and many animals on the planet. That you sense that there are individual battles that all these animals are fighting on a daily basis. For all our tools and techniques and fancy bits of kit, that's what's important, that people are struck by moments of intensity of an individual's life, that they can take something from that and connect with the natural world.
Epic imagery with intimate stories seems to have been the key to creating great Planet Earth moments. And everyone has a favourite moment.
One of the moments I really like is the baboons walking along not wanting to get their paws wet.
My greatest Planet Earth moment had to be seen with Humpback Whale.
The opening shot of the cave programme.
Those snow geese, they were like an impressionist painting.
That phenomenal shot of Angel Falls.
Wolf chasing caribou.
Wolves chasing down the baby caribou.
One of the greatest Planet Earth moments has got to be the Birds of Paradise.
I've seen it hundreds of times and it still makes me laugh.
There's something very human and very funny about it.
The emperor penguins.
The great white shark sequence.
I love the snow leopard sequence because I think it's beautifully shot.
That mountain goat shot.
Now, all that remains is for you to decide which is your great